Brought to you by Mint Mobile. Stay tuned for a special offer at the end of the show. Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Jouar, and today is Wednesday, February 26, 2025, and I've got the lovely Matteo with me. Matteo, how are you?
Very well, thanks. Even better now that I'm back on the Mobile Tech Podcast with you.
It's been a little while, right? For some reason. I was like, you've been on my list, and I'm like, the other day I was like, perfect. I'm in France. He's in Scotland. Makes it even easier. Yes, folks. Last week I was in San Francisco. The week before I was in Germany, and now I'm in France visiting my mom ahead of the MWC in Barcelona. So that's exciting. There's a bunch of stuff that's going to happen there. Are you going, Matteo? Will we see you there?
No. This year I have some personal things to see to. I'm traveling to Italy to visit my parents.
Oh, that's lovely.
It's a big birthday for my father.
Oh, okay. Great. Well, listen, we'll miss you, but this is why you're on the show, because we're going to cover everything that happened this week, well, at least up to Wednesday. And there's a few things, though. The thing that I think you and I are both the most excited about is clicks for Android.
Yes.
I mean,
it's been a long time coming, but good thing they took their time. It looks as if they've done it thoughtfully. And there's one of those and another thing. I think at the end of Michael's video, he showed us off clicks for Android, but for some very specific devices.
Yeah, and that's actually, we don't know what that is, right? So, you should watch the video. I'll put it in the show notes. This is a video that Mr. Mobile, Michael Fisher, who is a co-founder of Clicks, so this full disclaimer, made a video about the new Clicks for Android, showing us a little bit what's going on. So here's a general takeaway. There is 3 products you can get right. Well, you will soon be able to get, because they're not quite finalized yet. But there's a Pixel version for Pixel 9 and Pixel 9 Pro. There is a Galaxy version for the S25. And the one I'm most excited about is the Razer Plus 2024 version, which also works as Razer 2024. To be confirmed whether it also works with Razer 2023 Plus and 2023. For those of you in the rest of the world, that would be the Razer 40 Ultra and 40, and the Razer 50 Ultra and 50. And so it's designed for the 50 and 50 Ultra, which are the Razer Plus 2024 and a Razer Minus, whatever you want to call it. So that's exciting, right?
It is. I'm a very happy customer of Clicks technology. I've had my case for the iPhone 15 Pro Max.
Which one do you have? Do you want to show it?
Yes, I have the Founders Edition in grey.
Nice.
And my Founders Edition number is 1999.
Wow, that's fantastic. Somebody had 0069, I think, and I was just like,
giggles.
It's like 00, or 0042, if Hitchhiker's Guide reference. Yeah. But look, I have the Founders case as well in yellow. I don't remember what my number is. Very low. It's 0 something, 3 digits, not 002 digits. But obviously, as media, I got it early. I used it with an iPhone 15 Pro Max last year. In fact, if you go on Forbes, I did a review for them. Forbes vetted. I'll put it in the show notes. But I really loved it. For first gen product, it was really great. And now I have an iPhone 16 Pro. It's actually recording backup audio right now, so I can't show it to you. But it has a Clicks case, the new one, version 2, with the right size, obviously, since not a Pro Max. And it has that beautiful brown, orange rust color, whatever they called it, which I really love. It's very nice.
Burgundy?
It's more of an orange than a red. I can't remember. If you go to their website right now, you look at the iPhone cases, it's the cool color if you want. I like bright colors on my cases. So yeah, and honestly, I haven't reviewed anywhere the new case, but the new case adds a whole bunch of more functionality. For example, you have MagSafe built in properly now. Before that, there was no MagSafe, so you lost some of that magnetic power, on the case you have. The new one fixes that. There's a few other things. The keys are shaped slightly differently and easier to use even. I can't remember what the other one thing was. There was an improvement in the USB-C, the way it handles some stuff works with, I believe, the data connection, but I can't remember. I think any accessory, like you can do data transfer, but you can't if it has to be powered, the device that you plug in. So like if you're just copying files over or something or doing Android Auto, sorry, I should say CarPlay. If you're doing Apple CarPlay, I think wired, I think you can use the Clicks case, and of course charging works, but in the original, the one you have, only charging works, I think. And then so they've added that, but apparently if you plug in a mic, so every time I use my lav mics, I have to take it out of the case because it needs power from the phone. So I hope they can fix that. But Android,
yeah, this is big.
this is huge, right? But I mean, it's interesting that only 9 and 9 Pro for the Pixel and only S25, not Plus, not Ultra. But that's the teaser you mentioned, because at the end they said they're working on something for big phones and they left it at that. So if you have a 9 Pro XL Pixel, if you have a Galaxy S25 Ultra from Samsung, wait and see what they're going to do, because they're definitely doing something, right?
Yeah, it's a big teaser, and I have to say, maybe it's a good thing. I'll wait and see what that teaser leads us to, because I have to say, I've enjoyed my Clicks keyboard case so much that it drove my decision not to upgrade to the iPhone 16 series. So I'm still on the 15 Pro Max.
Wow.
And at this point, I'm seriously considering if I do need a 16 series or even a 17 series, because I'm enjoying Clicks so much. It's the phone I use for my sort of day job. So it has Slack and email and all that
and so
key
you're
stuff.
Spending a lot of time with those thumbs, aren't you?
I am, but I have to say it has changed the way I communicate. So when you're on a keyboard, it's easy to just quickly respond. There's less resistance. There's less effort involved. It takes less time. Whereas with Clicks, even though I am quite a fast typer on the physical QWERTY keyboard, I find it changes the way I compose my email. Mm-hmm. I'm a bit more thoughtful about my communication. And being slowed down like that, I think, is a good thing. Because where I could just give a sort of flippant response on Slack to someone, I'm now a little bit more thoughtful, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah, it's fantastic. That's a really good perspective. I'll be frank, I am not a Clicks. I mean, I love the product, but I'm not a Clicks user. Like, the reality is I don't have my phone in the case all the time. Sometimes I do. If I know I'm going to like an event and I know I'm going to use my iPhone a lot and I know I want to type a lot, it definitely like that. Especially for me, it's not so much typing as it is the shortcuts to quickly switch apps and copy paste and all that stuff. It's so nice to have that, right on a physical keyboard. But I still type faster on glass, and I do not need Clicks to be a happy camper, but I appreciate it. And I also think that, I was bummed to see all these keyboard equipped phones go away, because some people want that. And so now you have choice. And not only do you have choice of an iPhone naked or an iPhone with Clicks, now you have choice of a Pixel 9 series naked or a Galaxy S25 naked or with Clicks. And I think the icing on the cake for me is the Razr, because I love folding phones, particularly the flip type. And I think the Razr is absolutely the best of them. I think that the Galaxy Z Flip series is a solid phone, but I don't think that Samsung's been pushing the envelope with their folding phones because they're being complacent. And I feel that Moto, being the underdog, has tried their best. And you see that in the result. I think maybe durability, Samsung still has the edge overall. And this is empirical at this point. I haven't tested it. But the way I see it is, the Razr is the more innovative, the thinner, the more sophisticated, the bigger front display. All these things add up. There's only one boneheaded decision on the Razr Plus 2024/Razr 50 Ultra last year, and that's the removing the ultra wide and going for a very useless 2x telephoto. Because if you have a 50 megapixel main sensor, why don't you just optical quality in sensor crop to the middle 12 megapixels lose your pixel binning, but at least you get 2x of the best possible quality. So then, have an ultra wide instead of this, because the telephoto is only 2x, and it's also not stabilized. It doesn't have OIS. I mean, it has electronic stabilization, but that doesn't count to me. So I'm a little, of course, Razer minus whatever the basic Razer 50, not Ultra, has an ultra wide still. So yeah, I think this is exciting. From what I understand, you can order the Pixel ones right now, and they are coming very soon, like within days or weeks. And then the Samsung and the Razer one, you can order. I'm not sure you order now, but they're not coming right away. I think it's April, the time frame. So just be aware of that, right? Like if the sooner you order, the earlier you're in the queue. And I feel that the Razer one has me most excited because, on my 15 Pro Max, my yellow case, my original Founders case, it's massive. It's like, it's a weapon, right? You're holding this thing and you're like, I could slay someone with it. Whereas now, part of the reason I got a 16 Pro non-Max was specifically to be able to use clicks and have something a little more manageable. And I think that the Razer is the most manageable of them all, right? Because you have the choice. You need more real estate, you flip it open, you have lots of space, you do your thing, you close it up again, and you can still use it on the front display. Mwah. Wonderful.
Yeah, the clicks cases with the flip format foldable phones is the best of both worlds. When you have it folded in the clicks case, you have the equivalent of a normal smartphone with a smaller window, but you have the joy of that physical tactile feedback.
Yeah.
And if you open it up, you have the same as on a full-on smartphone in a clicks case. So that is, I think, the best accessory for a flip foldable. And I really hope they do give us a clicks for in this case, this is the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 7.
Z Flip.
Because I will be one of the first to buy one of those if it's released.
Yeah, no, I think it'd be really nice if they did it. I think ultimately, there's small companies still. It's actually, I'm really surprised they pulled off this Android stuff. I did not expect it so soon. I thought it was going to happen maybe later this year or maybe in 2026. But holy crap, this is real. And now they have something else for us, for the big phone users that we are, right? So like I have a Pixel 9 Pro XL as my Pixel. I have a Pixel 9 Pro Fold as well, which is my daily right now. But the point I'm making is that I would need the bigger case because I don't like, these are review units. And right now, if, Google, I can't just reach out to them and say, send me a Pixel 9 Pro because I want to test it with clicks, like I think that clicks will send me a device. Absolutely. But it's much harder for me to get Google to help me out when they've already sent me the cream of their crop, right? 9 Pro XL and 9 Pro Fold. I can't complain. Like, some companies wouldn't, like OnePlus would probably send me whatever I want, but that's, again, different PR people, right? So, yeah. So I think this is great news. And to me, I think the Razer use case makes the most sense. Now, Michael pointed something out in his video, which I think is a bit of disappointment. It turns out that the Razer, if you plug an accessory into the USB-C port, disables its wireless charging coil. And I'm thinking it's probably because a lot of phones keep their wireless charging coil enabled when you charge via cable. But I think that if you still put it down on a wireless charger while it's plugged in, it basically just ignores the wireless charger and doesn't charge. But it still creates thermal energy, right? You still have that current generated by the wireless charger coming into the phone, and they can just dissipate that extra heat by not using it. But I think the challenge with the Moto is that it's so thin, that they are basically running out of thermal envelope if they do that. So they just disable completely, the wireless charging when you plug something in, so that there's less of that heat happening. And I think that's my theory as to why the Clicks case, because it's an accessory, because it plugs into the USB-C port of the Razer, will not let you wirelessly charge if you have the Razer in the case. And so maybe that's something that Moto can fix in the future. Who knows?
Well, as you alluded there to the heat management on the coil when plugged in. Well done to Lenovo for avoiding giving us some Samsung Galaxy Note 7 drama.
Oh yeah. Well, I think the thing about like thermals are getting so critical now because the modern chips, when they peak, are so powerful and they get so hot. And but on top of that, the phones are getting thinner. Not just the folding phones, but we've got the iPhone Air coming, whatever it'll be called. We have the S25 Edge that is going to be a thin phone. The latest rumors, and we'll touch on them soon, is Oppo's Find X8 Mini is actually going to be a thin phone, and it's not going to be called that. It's going to be called the Find X8 Next, as in next generation. I guess everybody's going gung-ho on thin phones. And
yeah,
Qualcomm even made a binned version of the 8 Elite with 7 cores instead of 8 cores, which you find in the Oppo Find N5, right? So this is happening. I think we're going to see a lot more thin phones. Speaking of it, I showed it last week, but there it is in its case, but it's so thin. Oh my God, it's incredible. This Oppo Find N5, lovely phone. Highly recommend it.
So do you think that 18 months ago, when they started this hardware generation development, they may have misread a press release from Motorola when they released the Think phone and said, oh, we need to do thin phones?
Yeah, maybe that's a good one. I don't know. I mean, look, the reality is, here's my theory on these thin phones. I think it's great. We've seen thin phones before. The Moto Z, right? The one with the mods, the original Verizon only exclusive was 5 mm thin. 5. Yeah. This is back 10 years ago, more than that.
Wow. It is.
So my point is, it's not the first time. Joni, or one of those Chinese manufacturers, made, I think, a phone that was 4.8 mm at one MWC a few years ago. I remember seeing it thinking, how is this even possible? And so we've seen this before. The point is that there's a resurgence. And I think the reason for that resurgence is that phones are kind of boring. Unless you go folding phone, you're stuck with pretty much everybody's candy bar phones looking the same. And so, Apple, of course, and Samsung are like, well, how can we, it's kind of like, when you see these movies come out, like they have like the volcano movie from the one studio, and then there's a volcano movie from the other studio. It's kind of like, it's almost like there's some kind of weird conspiracy. They talk to each other in the back rooms of the internet or of the corporate ladder, and they're like, we're going to make a thin phone. You should make a thin phone. Yeah, okay, we're going to make a thin phone. You should make a thin phone. Yeah, okay, cool.
I don't know if it's actually the companies themselves doing it or their sort of upstream supply chains, because ultimately these are right. These are all component makers, and ultimately the MediaTeks, Qualcomm's, battery makers will all have reference devices that we never see.
Exactly.
And they're saying, look, you can do this with it. Yeah. And then you get the outliers like Doogee and Unihertz and Yukatel coming out with the 22,000 milliamp.
Oh my God, I have one of those. Not this particular one, but I have the previous one, the one that even has like a grip, like, like a camcorder grip. And that thing is like this thick. It's like the opposite of that.
It's the opposite.
But it's 22,000 milliamp hours. It's crazy, right?
Yeah, it is, but it solves a problem for a certain type of customer who may not have regular electricity access. We recently had storms here in the UK, and I was lighting up our living room using this Unihertz phone for almost 12 hours.
That's amazing.
It was really good. So that has a reason to exist. And in markets where you don't regularly have electricity, that's a good thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I look forward to the day when the ultra-thin smartphones will have similar longevity in terms of battery life.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm concerned about right now, frankly, is that the iPhone Air and the S25 Edge are not going to use silicon carbon batteries, which are becoming very prevalent on flagships on Chinese phones, like especially BBK Group and Honor and Huawei have been the poster children for these. Xiaomi still hasn't quite gotten there, but they're coming. But definitely Apple and Samsung again are on the tail end of adoption there. And Samsung, I think I've joked around about this before, but I do feel that there's a valid concern at their corporate level. They have some kind of trauma around the aforementioned, as you already did, Note 7. And I think that because of that, they're moving extremely cautiously. And Apple is just, very conservative. It's all about, like, I'm not trying to be mean here, but like Apple is very pragmatic and they're, want to make high profit margins. So they're going to kind of find the right balance of picking technology that's not necessarily bleeding edge. I was talking with, Ryan Thomas 2 weeks ago on the podcast about this. It's the same, they don't want to take chances with the cameras because they're leaving that to the Chinese, just as they're leaving the batteries, silicon carbon stuff to the Chinese, because
but it's also I think again we go back to supply chains here, because these batteries are not consistent in their yields.
True.
And at the scale of Samsung and Apple, even just having a small percentage of faulty batteries means quite a lot of expense in terms of returns and customer support.
But
they need to go for tried and tested. The bigger they are, and the bigger their scale.
But who's number 3 right now? Like the top 3, there's always either Xiaomi or BBK Group, right? One of the BBK brands.
BBK Group as a whole is definitely number 3.
Yeah. So my point is, they are doing it. So their supply chains are getting optimized for that, I think. The silicon carbon thing is finally mature, I think. But I'm talking about even the cameras. Like, you don't see 1-inch sensors on a Samsung or Apple phone, but you see that on Xiaomi. You see that on BBK Group, right? Variable aperture, you see that on Honor. You see that on Huawei. You see that on Xiaomi. So, I don't know. I think it's interesting. And overall, though, I feel like, wow, we've gone away from clicks quite a bit there. But it's like, how did we get here?
Well, this is what happens when you and I get
this
chatting.
Is fantastic. We're a total tangent here. But I think that this all started with thinness and the wireless charging coil and all that. Look, I'm excited about clicks. Here's what I'm thinking we're going to get for the big phones. We're going to get... And those of you watching on Patreon right now, I'm going to illustrate with my hands. But those of you, who are not on Patreon, first of all, you should join the Patreon and support me and see the video version. You get it in advance, every week. So $5 a month, consider it. But for those of you who are not watching, you're going to have to imagine my hands and remember what those Nokia phones like the E series used to do. That slide up landscape keyboard with that very, very satisfying chunk, sound. The FX Tech phone a few years ago was like that as well. And that was an Android phone. By the way, some of the people who worked on that phone are now at Clicks. So that's part of the reason why I'm thinking maybe this surprise is going to be a landscape MagSafe, that magnetically attaches to the back of the iPhone Pro Max and, deliver us some incredible landscape keyboard goodness. And then, of course, on the Pixels and the Samsung, they'll have a case, right?
Yeah. So I'm going to go with another wild prediction about this, which is obviously going to be wrong, but I think the likes of Michael and Kevin will lawyer up and in the face of Paramount Pictures do a Star Trek tricorder with a QWERTY keyboard.
Yes, that would be pretty awesome. Maybe if they get big enough, Clicks as a company, and if there is a continued burgeoning need for hardware keyboards on phones that takes off enough that they get like a decent percentage of the market of cases, I could see them doing partnerships with, Lego or Paramount or whatever, like Star Trek, of course, maybe a Star Wars edition, R2-D2, just comes right out of the thing and it stores inside of your case, a little R2-D2. I don't know.
Hipsters in flannel shirts rejoice. There will be choice in your geekery.
Exactly. But I think there's plenty of choice with this new Android edition. That's a big step, and I'm happy to see it. And I'll be honest with you, after using the 15 Pro Max with the original Founders case, it's a little big for that form factor. Don't get me wrong, you and I can totally rock this because we're phone nerds. But
And
for
we're phone nerds who wear cargo pants.
exactly. But for the average person, it's a little bit of a big ask. Whereas a 16 or a 15 Pro, right? No problem. I think the form factor is perfect. And of course, now that we have an iPhone 16e, which we discussed on last week's show, I think that the sizes are almost identical between the 16e, the 16 base, and the 16 Pro. At least the 16 and 16 Pro, I believe, can share cases, except for the camera cutout. So, let's see what happens. I'd be interested to see if we hear of a Clicks case for 16e.
Yes, I mean, considering the scale that we're expecting the 16e to have in the market, and especially how it's going to cannibalize some of the existing Apple user base,
Yeah,
I would expect that to be a ripe target for not just Clicks, but any accessory manufacturer.
yeah. I wonder who's going to copy Clicks once they get big enough. I mean, I feel like they're already big enough, but okay, let's not talk about that. I want them to succeed. I don't want them to have to struggle. And honestly, what I'm most excited about here is the Razer one, and also the colors. That blue is really cool. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like this was the most exciting, happiest tech news of the week for me, honestly. And it's not just because I know Michael and some of the folks on the team, because some of them are ex-BlackBerry, ex-FX Tech. It's not just that. It's just that I love when technology delights. And even though it's not for me, I'm still not a majority physical keyboard user on my phones. I love that you have that option. I love that you, Matteo, are doing all your work Slack stuff on this product. I love that there are people out there who are like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. I love that there are going to be people out there who are going to do that with their Razer. It just warms my heart that we have these options, that we have the playfulness is back in phones because of this accessory.
Yeah. This reminds me of the old Android's sort of slogan, be together, not the same.
That's right. And the other thing I want to point out is, and again, this is, planting seed for the futures. I'm sure that Michael is going to be listening to this podcast. So, the one thing he mentioned in his video is playing like console emulators using the Razer on the front screen with the Clicks keyboard case, like it almost is the same size as a little Game Boy, right? Or Playdate or something. And I'm thinking maybe we need a Clicks, not keyboard, but a Clicks D-pad ABCD button or ABXY button, analog stick kind of situation.
Fantastic.
Just planting seeds as one does. Very, very exciting about this.
I look forward to be beaten soundly in Call of Duty Mobile by a 12-year-old using a nice clicky tactile feedback input method.
Exactly. So yeah, let's talk about some of the news this week. There's a few things. Most of them are teasers. Some of them are rumors. Some of them are leaks. We don't actually have a lot of hard factual news this week. But those teasers I think are pretty good. So we just talked about Xiaomi and 1-inch sensors. There is a Xiaomi 15 Ultra teaser floating around that apparently I believe the CEO himself teased, where they showed us all the different colors. And they're talking about the sensors in the cameras, and it looks like they're keeping the 1-inch sensor, hooray. And now, of course, they're adding that 200 megapixel second telephoto, I believe. That's what the rumor's been.
It looks as if there's 4 lenses on there.
There's definitely 4 lenses based on the 14 Ultra, which I have from last year. Last year, we had a main camera, 1-inch with variable aperture. We had a 3x telephoto with a non-periscope lens, just, a normal lens. And we had, they're all 50 megapixels, and we had a 50 megapixel 5x telephoto with a periscope setup. And then we had a 50 megapixel ultra wide. What we're looking at this year, I think, from the rumors I've read and from this teaser, is 1-inch sensor for the main, whether it has variable aperture or not, I don't know. That hasn't really been discussed. Again, 3x regular non-periscope telephoto, also 50 megapixels, and then a 5x 200 megapixel periscope telephoto. And that's the one that's going to compete with the Vivo, X200 Pro and the X100 Ultra from last year, which also have the crazy 200 megapixel, where you can zoom in to infinity because you have so much sensor, large size, and many pixels to play with. So you can kind of like crop. And then, of course, a 50 megapixel ultra wide. So it's actually a very similar setup to last year, except you get now a 200 megapixel on that 5x periscope. So.
And let's not forget, there's a Leica sticker on that.
Well, that's the other thing I was going to say. Look at that design, right? Like that third color option, where it has like a metal. It looks like it's a metal and leather. Like it's really Leica-ish, isn't it?
Yeah. If I weren't traveling to Asia at the end of March, my pocket money would be put aside for one of these.
I'm supposedly getting a review unit after MWC. I hear that some folks already have devices, but I wasn't the lucky one to get it initially. So, but hey,
I have to say, I have been, for the last few months, I've been using the Xiaomi 14T Pro.
I have it as well. Yeah, it's pretty great.
And I'd say for the price range, considering this isn't a proper flagship, the camera performance really blows me away.
Yeah, it's very good. The T series has always been very good.
It has. But the fact that I think the tuning that Xiaomi have optimized over the last couple of years has really changed from a Samsung-y oversaturated punch in the retina type of photography to a much more realistic, let's say, unsaturated view, which, as far as cameras go, is much more true to life.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you got to keep in mind that the partnership with Leica has really helped their color science. And I think, obviously the 14T Pro that you have has Leica as well. So it's one of the few, the T series and the main series and some of the folding phones have Leica, but not all Xiaomi phones do. So that's pretty great. So there you go. I'll put a link to a GSM Arena thing that has all the photos of these different color choices for the 15 Ultra. So I'm looking forward to that. And the next thing is kind of related in a way, because it's news about this upcoming rumored Oppo Find X8 Ultra, right? Obviously, it's supposed to be called the Night God, in quotes, which is kind of like, so what?
Let's just clarify. It's the Night God without a K at the beginning. As
indeed, yes.
Nocturnal deity.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, it's. Thanks for clarifying for those people who are not necessarily reading the article right now. So the thing about the Ultra, I have the X7 Ultra from last year, and hopefully they'll be sending me this one. I took it to Antarctica. I tested the cameras there. I was like, I trusted my once in a lifetime trip to Antarctica that I spent a lot of money on to the Oppo Find X7 Ultra, and I don't regret it. This was an incredible camera setup. So,
here's a mobile travel question for you. When you went to Antarctica, did you go through any countries in South America?
I went through Argentina, yeah.
And was there any limitations to how many phones you could take with you?
No, Mexico is the only one I'm aware of right now that is enforcing that. So
I'm my wife Candice and I are going to Peru in September, and we've been warned that you're only allowed to have 2 devices with you. If you have more than 2, you get hit by import duties.
Yeah, it's quite possible. I mean, that's what Mexico's doing, to kind of deter people from bringing things in to sell in the country. And I can understand. It's a little silly, though. But yeah, maybe you'll have to choose wisely. But Argentina did not have that limitation. We flew to Buenos Aires and spent a few days there, because you don't want to be late for your cruise, right? So in case the flights were delayed and there were issues, we give ourselves a few extra. Plus, we'd never been to Buenos Aires, so that was great. And then we flew to Ushuaia after that, which is at the very tip. And that was included in our cruise. So that was managed by the cruise company, charter flight. And then we got on the ship and we did like almost 2 weeks at sea, and it was fantastic. But I brought a bunch of phones. I brought, and this article is on Forbes as well. If you guys want, I can put it in the show notes from last year. I compared the Find X7 Ultra with the iPhone 15 Pro Max with the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra and the Pixel 8 Pro. So it's quite the interesting comparison. And then the article that I wrote about the actual review of the camera system and everything, that was on Geekspin with Elena, specifically for the Find X7 Ultra. So this Find X8 Ultra, I'm obviously very excited to see what they do. It's probably going to be the same recipe as last year, 450 megapixel sensors. It's going to have like 2 telephotos, one 3x, one 6x. It's going to have an ultra wide, and it's going to have a 1-inch main sensor. The question is, will they match what Xiaomi's been doing by putting variable aperture in that? It'll be interesting to see. And then, of course, Night God means probably the sensors are really large. And from the leaks here, that camera pod looks insane. Like more insane than last year's Find X7 Ultra. That was already insane.
Yeah, so that camera pod, it's like a giant stainless steel ring with cutouts for different sensors. So are they trying to do something clever with isolation or white balance with that reflective stainless steel? Who knows? We'll find out soon, and I look forward to your review of the device when it comes out.
Hopefully, send me one. It's not guaranteed if it's a China only phone, for example. But they have sent me the Find X8 Pro, which I love, and the regular X8, and then they've sent me the N5 as well. So far Oppo's been pretty great. Thanks, folks, for sending me the stuff. So anyway, check out the link. I'll put in show notes. Speaking of Find N5, this super thin, beautiful, awesome phone, bad news. So last week I had mentioned that, we found out that OnePlus wasn't going to do an Open 2 based on this Oppo Find N5, which is very disappointing because the OnePlus Open is one of my favorite phones of the last 2 years. And I rocked one in one of my pockets for an entire year nonstop. I couldn't get rid of it. I loved it so much. And here we are now with the Find N5, and this beautiful thin phone is not only not going to turn into a OnePlus Open 2, but it's also not coming to Europe, we find out. So this global launch is global in quotes, in the sense that it's mostly Southeast Asia, like Singapore, it's Middle East maybe, and China, so limited global release. And I'm wondering what's going on here. I'm wondering if it's supply chain yields. There's got to be a good explanation. What is your theory on that, Matteo?
I think it's really difficult to say. These things are, as I said, hardware is hard, but they're usually 18 months in the making, at least.
Right.
And that's based on expectations from suppliers about components, maybe the actual people putting them together and doing the actual aluminium or metal or titanium cutting to make the frames. So there's a lot of moving parts.
Because the hinge is titanium 3D printed, and it takes like hours to do. So that might be a limitation in yield.
So there's a lot of really, really complicated things going on to make these phones. And I think maybe they suddenly can't get what they were expecting. Global supply chains, especially in the mobile industry, have been in a state of flux since for the last 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes there are major misses in terms of being able to actually deliver the hardware.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's not sort of Tesla Roadster level stuff, but pretty close sometimes. So maybe they just can't get the parts to do it, and they've decided to go for the high revenue markets where Oppo also have some sort of extra services, because let's not forget Hong Kong, China, and Singapore will also have Oppo's internal media and app and shopping sales and referral systems built in.
Yeah.
So they might want to avoid the less profitable markets where they can, if they have limited supply.
That's a good point. So anyway, on this disappointment, let's move on to some more exciting stuff. Nothing Phone 3A Pro specifically has been teased by Nothing themselves in a 10-minute video that you should all be watching because it shows you the design of the phone, how they came to that design, the iterations to come to that design. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting in here was it revealed that there's an extra button on this phone and it looks like a camera button. But then there's a rumor flying around that this is a button that invokes some sort of AI functionality as well. So I'm not quite sure. Like, does it fire up ChatGPT or Gemini Live? I mean, who knows? The point is, I'm looking forward to. I'm getting a device. It's coming. I'll stay tuned. We should have way more information next week. But the bottom line is that I'm super excited about these two phones, the 3A and the 3A Pro. So far from what I see, the leaks, the rumors, the teasers themselves, what Nothing has shared with us. The 2A was great last year, and I kind of even liked it better than the 2, to be honest, even though the 1 and 2 are great phones. I feel that they really found their mojo with the 2A. And of course, CMF Phone 1 in a completely different category was a masterpiece of a phone, probably the most underrated phone of 2024, in my opinion.
I totally agree.
100% brilliant. But then this 3A now, I think it's interesting that they're aiming for mid-range pricing. At least that's what we expect. Very competitive, like, mid-range in the rest of the world, not US mid-range. Like we're talking, less than $500 mid-range. So, but they're putting a periscope telephoto in one of them. And I presume it's going to have some kind of mid-tier processor, not a flagship processor in there. So it's interesting to me that, we're seeing Nothing do what we've seen happen with some of the Chinese phones, right? Where they're actually putting these crazy cameras, like the Realme 14 Pro Plus comes to mind right now, right? That's always been the poster child of, if you want an affordable, like $350 phone that has incredible camera systems that come very close to Realme's flagships, but has not flagship specs in terms of CPU and whatever, you buy that phone. And I think Nothing is going in that area. And I think that's probably because in markets like India and, other very competitive markets, I think there's a place for that kind of product, right? Is that your take too?
Definitely. So obviously, Nothing are a new company, as we see. This is really their third generation or 3+1, 3+1 generation of hardware. They've been finding their market. They previously did not have a smartphone market, and they've realized that with CMF in India as well as most of Southern Europe, in price-sensitive markets, if they can deliver consistent value, they will win loyalty from customers.
Yeah.
And they've obviously realized that they started off with a set of great transparent earphones that gave them a clear brand identity that then continued with their smartphones. They stand out. For people to whom a smartphone is a key status symbol as well, to have something different in the slab form factor and have it affordable whilst delivering good compute power, which is good enough. Sometimes I question, why do we need a Snapdragon 8 series device?
Absolutely.
When a Snapdragon 6 series is, let's face it, really, really good for most people.
Yeah.
I think Nothing have done a really good thing to get to this point in such a short period of time. So
I agree 100%.
It's good to have another player in the market pushing the likes of Honor and Oppo or BKK Group and others in that price category to deliver better value.
Yeah.
Because I think Samsung have lost their way a bit with the A series.
100%.
They need to have that sort of little terrier barking at their ankles to get them moving again. Google has been eating the A series' lunch with their own A series. It's an interesting segment of the market, and I think the one which is actually more impactful to more people. It really affects their lives more.
I think you're right. The other thing that's exciting is that they're selling this phone in the US, even though they're doing it through their beta program or whatever, they're still selling it. So that means you can get it. I mean, I'm assuming that's what they're going to do because that's what happened with the 2A, right? So, yeah, we'll see what happens.
You could say that they're transparently entering the US market under the cover of a beta program.
Yeah, I guess it's a clever way to kind of test the waters. I think, in that sense, I think it's smart. It's also a great way to build community, right? At the same time,
Yeah.
in markets that are a little harder to penetrate because the carriers have so much, to say. So yeah, this is good stuff. Next up, we have the OnePlus Watch 3 being delayed for a typo. I think this is pretty hilarious. So I have it here. I'm wearing it. For those of you on Patreon, I've shown it to you last week. It's a great watch. Mine has the typo. So here's the funny thing. It's crazy because I reviewed that watch in time for the embargo. Kind of a very quick review. I only wore the watch for about a week, which is really not that long. But
So not one charge cycle.
actually, a single charge.
Wow.
I have the always on display on my watch. And because I'm not a big sports person doing like workout GPS stuff, I'm getting 4 days consistently with always on display. Just notifications, step counting, sleep tracking. I've got continuous blood oxygen, continuous heart rate monitoring on. So I'm not like the most power save mode possible. I'm in their smart mode, but with the always on display, and I'm getting 4 days consistently on this watch right now. So the point is that I reviewed it for Hot Hardware and I took photos of the back, telephoto, like zoomed macro photos of the back, and I did not notice the typo until somebody else pointed it out. And then I checked my photos, and sure enough, my watch has a typo. And the typo says, instead of made in China, it says Meta in China, MEDA instead of MADE. So the E and the A are swapped. And I love that OnePlus social media was so good about it. And they posted a little tweet or whatever it was that says, "We made a mistake," I think it was.
Yeah.
MEDA. Yeah, pretty awesome.
And
so
I would like to thank OnePlus for bringing the attention of an Italian town called Meda, which is just
there is,
north of
yeah, indeed.
near Malpensa Airport, to the attention of the world. They should do a special edition just for them.
Well, it's going to be a limited edition because here's what I gather. It looks like they had shipped some watches out already and they're pulling them back, I presume, because I mean, all of us reviewers have the error on our watch. And you can continue to pre-order, but the actual sale date is sometime in April. So, look, I don't want to make fun of this. It's an unfortunate error, but I think they're handling it well. And stay tuned, folks. If you've ordered that watch, it's worth it. This is one of the best Android Wear or Wear OS watches you can buy. It's really impressive. I love it. As much as I love my Pixel Watch, my large one, Pixel Watch 3, it's a completely different thing. I think, in my review, I kind of touched on that. And I said that the way to look at this, the way to look at these Android Wear OS watches is you have really three choices, in my opinion. You go for the kind of like Garmin equivalent and you get a Galaxy Watch Ultra, right? Like you're an Android user, you can't get an Apple Watch, so that's not going to happen. So if you're super pro crazy workout, you get a Garmin. But if you want the Android Wear OS experience, you get a Galaxy Watch Ultra. If you want the most Apple Watch-like experience for Android, you get a Pixel Watch 3. And it comes in two sizes, which makes it great because if you have smaller wrists, you can get the small size, right? Then, of course, the middle ground here is like the OnePlus watch because, yeah, it's only available in one size. That's something. But, and it's big, I have to admit. But it's got that classic watch design. It looks like something you could wear on a night out, whereas the Pixel Watch does okay on a night out, but it's much more kind of generic, like Apple Watch like, It's not a watch as much as it is a computer on your wrist designed to track your health and fitness and give you notifications. Whereas this, I might be able to get away with some people at a glance thinking it's just an analog watch. You know what I'm saying? Right? And so in that sense, and then with its incredible battery life, better than the other two, I think it kind of fits this kind of weird middle ground niche. And in that sense, I really love it. I think it's really solid. So, yeah.
To what you were saying earlier, I'd say if you want the sort of normal Apple Watch experience, I would say the normal Samsung Galaxy Watch 7 fits in that category in my view.
It does, but I feel like it's again like the OnePlus, more of a traditional design, where I think the Pixel Watch really has that weird outlandish, I've never seen anything like it before, that we saw initially when the Apple Watch came out. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I think that's kind of why I equate the two. But yeah, you're right. The Watch 7 exists. It comes in two sizes, much more affordable than the Ultra from Samsung. But I feel like it's not, you're going to get a better experience on the Pixel Watch, and you're going to get better battery life on the OnePlus Watch. So
I'm going to step it up. This might be a bit of an unusual device. It's the Xiaomi Watch S2, which is running HyperOS, not Android Wear. And so I'm getting really strong Huawei Watch GT flashbacks.
Yeah, well, the first OnePlus Watch was very much like that, right? I call those that category, the ones that last 2 weeks on a charge and have all that basic functionality of like notification, the health and fitness and wellness stuff, and have like, always on display as an option. But basically no real apps per se. They have some kind of payment method, but like you can't add like your standard apps to them. I call those fitness bands on steroids, because that's basically what they are. And there's nothing wrong with that. This is not me being derogatory.
No,
in fact, I actually love that category of smartwatches because, being an ex-Pebble person, it really kind of fits that, it's kind of the best of both worlds. It's like you get a smartwatch with an OLED that's big and can run forever on battery all at the same time. And then you don't have to worry about yourself with configuring it, setting up the apps, all that stuff that you have to do on an Apple Watch or a Wear OS watch. So
yeah, I've settled on this again after a series of Huawei and Honor devices in terms of the 2-week battery life, fitness tracking, notifications, but not much else.
Yeah,
I really prefer that, but that's just a very personal thing.
Yeah,
I always have multiple phones. I don't need to be in a situation where I don't have access to the screen.
No, exactly. I'm the same way. I mean, I don't use the Android apps really on my Wear OS watches. I don't, like, very rarely. Like, okay, there's a couple I do use. I use the Google Assistant all the time, and I use Google Pay all the time. But I don't need maps. I don't read my email on my watch. Like, I read the notifications and I go to my phone.
Wait a minute. Are you telling me you don't edit the podcast on your watch?
Not yet.
No, so you're not. You're wasting so much computing power.
I know, and that's
on your wrist.
But that's I think where this hybrid dual processor approach works, right? And I think that Samsung's doing something similar now, and we're seeing more and more of that going on for Wear OS. But I do appreciate those people who want to run Spotify on their LTE equipped Wear OS watch. There is a use case for that, but that's not me. Like, so anyway, speaking of Samsung, I'm excited about the next bit of a leak. There are renders of the Z Fold 7 appearing that look like it's going to be very thin. We're talking not quite as thin as the Oppo Find N5 or Honor Magic V3, which also is going to be probably improved upon by the Magic V4, I'm sure, which will probably come out before the Samsung Z Fold 7. But we're talking
with some cheeky engraving on the case, no doubt.
Indeed. And I'm talking about thinner than a OnePlus Open, thinner than a Pixel 9 Pro Fold. So we're looking at finally Samsung. They think they finally got the fire lit under their butt, and they're doing something about it. But
wait. As long as it's not Note 7
not
fire
Note
lit.
7 fire, yes. Oops. Good point. But are these renders real? Who knows? But hopefully it's real, because I'd like to see them push the envelope a little bit. So let's see what happens, right?
Yeah, it's as I said, 18 months to make hardware. It's not surprising that our leaked renders and probably early devices are in testing at the moment.
Yeah.
But I think it's still a bit early for them to start the rumor mill.
Yeah. Speaking of folding phones, the Huawei Pocket's been around on 2 generations now. Rumor has it that the 3rd generation of this flip style folding phone will have a 3:2 aspect ratio display, so that it's kind of going to be more in terms of physical size and shape like the original Pixel Fold, passport style. Because the only way you can do 3:2 with a display unfolded, like an iPad mini basically, would be to have something that's almost passport shaped, right? So we're going away from the traditional Razer Z Flip form factor here that the Pocket has been following all this time. And again, this is just a rumor, but I'm actually excited about that. And I wouldn't be surprised if of all the companies that would try to this and pull it off, that Huawei would do it, right?
Yeah. It's a bit early in terms of the rumor mill on this one to say, but it will be also going to be interesting to see what memory, what battery, and most importantly, what system on a chip it's running. Is it one of their newer Kirin chipsets? Is this going to be another one of those, wow, they did it again, and it's good enough for most users?
Yeah.
Let's face it, in some markets in Asia, as long as it runs the local all-in-one app, they don't really care if it's
and
what's
if it
under the
has
hood.
5G connectivity, and they're happy then,
So as long as it runs WeChat and it does so with a day's battery life, most people will be very happy with a 3:2 aspect ratio on.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be really interesting because, here's the thing, right? Like, as much as I'm very impressed and so far a huge fan after 2 weeks of use now of the Oppo Find N5, the reality is, and this is a problem not just with the N5, but all these folding phones that are book-style folding phones, is that you open them up and you get a square shape, essentially, almost a 1-to-1 aspect ratio. And that means you're wasting space when you're watching videos. Whereas if you put it next to an iPad mini, the iPad mini actually has a smaller display in diagonal size than the Find N5 open. But the aspect ratio is completely wrong for video on the Find. On the iPad mini, it works because it's 3:2. You don't have as much wasted space, right? So I think there's something to be said about that. And I think if you consume a lot of content and you're not more like, for me, it's about multitasking and putting 2 apps together and doing that kind of stuff that I like the book style, right? Or having a large screen that's not video to do stuff on, like edit photos in Google Photos is magnificent on a folding phone, right?
Yeah.
But most people don't do that. Most people consume content. So I say, good for Huawei to experiment and try something else.
Do you remember when we used to be outraged at people taking vertical video?
Oh my God.
And now
I'm still secretly outraged.
So am I.
Okay.
But yeah, we used to be outraged about vertical video, and that form factor or that format is now mainstream. I think it's time we started editing our podcasts in 3:2 aspect ratio. Let's get ahead of this thing.
It's a good idea. The last bit of news we have are a couple of new chips from MediaTek. The Dimensity 7400 and 7400X have come out, and they're very similar to last year's Dimensity 7300 and 7300X. Most changes have been around a slight bump in clock speed. Yeah, so honestly, I think we're going to see these on some folding phones or thin phones. And, they're 4 nanometer chips. There's nothing to sneer at here. The 7300 was very popular last year. In case you don't remember, that's the chip we saw in the CMF Phone 1 and the Nothing Phone 2A, in a bunch of Motorola phones that were mid-rangers. I think it's a solid chip. It performed really well. It was affordable, which is why it ended up in really affordable phones. And if this is anything like that, slightly improved and maybe inheriting a little bit of technology from the 9400, flagship chip, I'm all for it.
Yeah, so by the looks of it, they've updated the NPU, the neural
Yeah, of
processing
course.
unit, by a generation. So for all of you who are going to be doing on-device AI activities such as photo editing,
Yeah,
this will probably improve that.
yeah,
And these are great mid to high end chipsets. This, in my experience, the Dimensity 7000 series sits in between the Snapdragon 6 and 7 series in terms of performance.
exactly.
It's the Goldilocks one. And because it's MediaTek, they can compete on price and get into quite a lot of devices, maybe not for our audiences, but for the normal people who just like getting on with their phone and using their usual apps.
Exactly. And then, there's also, of course, a Dimensity 8400 out there. So, they've kind of got it all covered now. We've got the whole gamut. And it'll be interesting to see where they go from here for this year. Are we going to get like a 9400 plus? There's also, of course, a Dimensity 6400 out there. So, like, yeah, everything is. I think the family is complete for this 24, 25 year time frame with MediaTek.
What I would love to see is these types of chips, maybe a variant of them or a binned version in more devices like Chromebooks or Windows powered PCs, which is not unexpected if they can get the price points right.
Well, so they do have their Compagno series, which is this basically for tablets and Chromebooks. But they are rumors, very strong rumors. We've seen them come and go for years now that they're working on a competitive Windows on ARM compatible chip to go head on with the Snapdragon X Elite series from Qualcomm. So stay tuned for that, I guess.
Yeah, so I would love to see something more like the Chromebook competitors. So the $150 to $200 Windows machine running on a MediaTek chipset.
Mm-hmm.
If they can optimize Windows on ARM and get these chips good enough, that will sort of open up the market to affordable computing to more people.
I agree. Well, listen, that's the news. We should wrap up. Matteo, do you want to tell folks where they can find you on the internet, your various social media handles, your channels, where you create content, all that stuff?
Yeah, so my main sort of focus in terms of creating content is on YouTube. I work on the Tech Travel Geeks podcast and Tech Travel Geeks YouTube channel. Essentially, we cover consumer electronics, gadgets, mobile devices, and fashion too. Apparently I'm a fashion influencer now. We cover these things which we think makes the travel experience better. Traveling, as you probably know, Miriam, has its own set of challenges.
Yep.
Mobile technologies, batteries, cables, the whole range of things that make travel better and more pleasurable is what we cover. And I also participate on Instagram and Threads at Todoleo. That's Tango Oscar Delta Oscar Lima Echo Oscar. My handle that used to be on Twitter, now X. I've stopped posting there. I've deleted all my content. I'm maintaining my handle.
Okay.
But I'm now on Threads and Instagram.
Fantastic. Well, folks, you should definitely follow Matteo there. And don't forget to subscribe to Tech Travel Geeks. And then you know where to find me on the internet. I'm at Tankgirl, TNKGRL. That's my social media handle everywhere. And yes, I am not much on Twitter. I still post the podcast there, but that's basically it. I'm mostly on Threads and Instagram and Blue Sky with that handle. So find me there. And you know where the podcast lives, at mobiletechpodcast.com. We're on all the big platforms, so please subscribe, tell your friends. And yeah, there's an RSS feed as well. And if your app lets you rate or review the show, please consider doing that. It would help. There's also a YouTube channel, which hasn't been super active, but every now and then I post some hands-on and unboxing videos. youtube.com/mobiletechpodcast. You know how YouTube works. So like, subscribe, tell your friends, click the bell and comment and all that good stuff. And then finally, there's a Patreon. I mentioned it throughout the video, but if you want to support me, Patreon is where to go. Patreon.com/tankerl. That's patreon.com/TNKGRL. There is a bunch of tiers there, but the $5 tier is probably the best one because you get a video version of this podcast, generally with less edits. I'll leave in bloopers and more stuff in it. And you get that about 12 hours to 24 hours ahead of time. So before the public audio version goes out there, you can watch and listen to the podcast for $5 a month every week. And so if you can support me, that would help. That'd be great. So consider that. Patreon.com/TNKGRL. And finally, I want to thank our sponsor, Mint Mobile. So as you know, I'm constantly reviewing multiple phones, and while that's fun, it also means I'm constantly spending a lot of money for wireless service on multiple SIMs. That's where Mint Mobile comes in, and that's who I'm partnering with for today's podcast. If you also want to save money on your wireless service, switch to Mint Mobile. As tech-savvy early adopters, you've probably heard of Mint Mobile before, but let me quickly tell you how awesome their service is. Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for as low as $15 a month, and you don't have to sacrifice any coverage, speed, or data. They're built on the nation's largest 5G network. They keep costs low because they sell direct to you online. They cut out the retail stores and salespeople. Why should you pay more than you have to for access to the same network? In my experience testing phones, Mint Mobile delivers the same data speeds and call quality as the big three for a fraction of the cost. Switching to Mint is super easy. Thanks to their eSIMs, you can sign up and activate immediately right on your phone from the comfort of your home. No more standing around and waiting in line at a big wireless store. You can keep your current device and phone number and easily switch services. And if your phone isn't eSIM compatible, Mint will ship you a new SIM free of charge. All Mint Mobile plans include unlimited nationwide talk and text, lightning fast 5G, and free mobile hotspot. Mint will show you how much data you use each month and recommend plans that save you money. Mint also offers a modern family plan that lets you set up a super affordable family plan with as little as 2 lines. Use my link mintmobile.com/mobiletech to get premium wireless starting for $15 a month. That's mintmobile.com/mobiletech. Stop paying more than you need on your wireless bill and start saving big with Mint Mobile. And Matteo, thanks so much for joining me on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me again, Miriam. It's always great to go off on a tangent with you.
Oh my God, so much fun. I love it too. Folks, stay tuned. I'll have Matteo on again in the future, obviously, and I'll have a show next week from Barcelona Mobile Congress. So stay tuned for that. And until then, cheers, everybody.